If you're a victim of domestic abuse, leaving your partner is the most dangerous thing you can do.
When they leave, they know the degree of violence will increase. And it increases because the perpetrator has lost control.
A one-off federal government payment should be helping victims make that move, giving them access to cash and services of up to $5,000. But new figures show more than half those applying for the payment are being rejected.
We absolutely support the escaping domestic violence payment. We just want it to go directly and swiftly into the hands of that family that is struggling so hard to gain that safety.
The charities in charge of dispensing the payment have kept no records as to why people are being denied. However, a review of the program found difficulties establishing eligibility, with many fleeing survivors unable to provide documents like police or doctor's reports to prove the abuse. Others unable to prove financial hardship because they don't have bank accounts.
My greatest fear is that because they don't get that payment in a timely manner, that they return back to the place of abuse and to the hands of the abuser.
Jazz Rawlinson knows firsthand how harrowing it is to live in a violent household.
I grew up in a home with a perpetrator of domestic violence, and I lived with that abuse really from the age of 10 through till 18. I lived in silence for a very long time.
She says the onerous amount of documentation needed to access support makes it almost impossible for survivors.
There are so many hurdles to go through when you are trying to leave an abusive relationship, and to hear that there are victim survivors who are being turned away, it's not good enough.
The government says it's monitoring the program closely and has slashed payment wait times since it came into office. Clients who are turned down are referred to other services. 3 weeks into the new year, 2 women have already been killed, allegedly by an intimate partner. Advocates say if it's not made easier to access services, more deaths will follow.
These systems have got to change, because we're talking about actual women and children whose lives will be lost if these systems are not made more accessible.
Well, the CEO of the Women's Centre for Economic Safety, Rebecca Glenn, is here. Rebecca, how realistic is it to expect victims fleeing abuse to provide this vast collection of documentation?
I think that's a really good question. You know, it's not uncommon among the women that we support that they leave with nothing, just the clothes on their back. And so the idea that they've then got to supply all of the, identity documentation and other things, is perhaps not realistic. Sometimes that's because of, leaving an immediate threat, but sometimes it's because of the deliberate actions of the person abusing them to hide or withhold those documents. So this is not uncommon, and it means that suddenly we're talking about a burden that may not be realistic for people to be able to meet to qualify for the kinds of support that could really make a difference.
Rebecca, what are the consequences for women if they can't access these services or finance?
Well, we know that this program has been really such a welcome initiative, because without economic safety, there is no safety. If you don't have access to finances, if you don't have access to transport, if your housing is dependent on the person abusing you, your options are really limited. And the evaluation of this program itself has said that 51% of clients said they couldn't have left that violent partner without this support payment. So it's not always life and death, but it can be. So this payment is critical.
But how would you tweak the current system? I mean, you understand it quite well and you're immersed in it, to make it more accessible for women and less perilous, but also make sure that the system isn't taken advantage of.
So what we're really looking for is a system with flexibility that supports survivors' agency. Survivors' experiences of domestic abuse and coercive control can be really different from one another, and that makes it hard to design a system that can support everyone in every case. So what you need is flexibility. We need more flexibility for what the money can be used for. We need more flexibility for what makes you eligible. Why is it only adult partners, intimate partners? What about children who need that support? What about people who are being abused in another domestic situation, such as by a carer? So I think we need to increase the flexibility to provide support for people. And I think there are ways that you can start with belief and then gather the evidence later. But getting help to people when they need it immediately, I think, needs to be our first objective.
Rebecca, thank you so much for your time tonight. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And don't forget, if you do need help or support, you can always call 1800 RESPECT on 1800 737 732.